Kayley, did you know that the Do We Belong Here podcast team spent over 3,000 hours creating their newly released documentary?
Well, I did not know that exact number, but I did know they spent about 3 hours with the one and only Bob Ross of InfoSec.
Well, well, Kaylee, I get to spend far more hours than that with the Bob Ruff of InfoSec. So I still think 3 hours is better than none for them. So I'm glad that they did. I have to tell you though, Kelly, I saw you at the premiere event and we got a chance to watch it together. And I had not
Yeah.
seen the whole, the whole documentary until that moment. We were at the Tampa Theater with sort of a packed house of, friends of the podcasts that we do, both their podcast and our podcast, and friends of Cyber Florida and friends of USF, and all the great projects that are happening in that ecosystem. But I was just blown away. What was your reaction?
I was equally blown away. I mean, I was obviously on board and would have been on board even if I hadn't been a part of it. But I always support anything that kind of highlights those experiences of women and other underrepresented groups within our industry. But the excitement of the audience around seeing it and hearing them afterwards, and getting to see Serena up there on stage and her being celebrated for her role in it. It was just really wonderful, really wonderful.
And it was a great opportunity for some folks who, had been at the edges of this community to see just how large it is and how important some of the voices are. And it gave them that piece of it. My wife, who's not in this industry, came with me, and just that was sort of her takeaway from it all. Katie had mentioned just how broad it was, and it was explaining some of the problems that certainly that women did and other sort of unrepresented groups had in the industry. But it was also, by having these great voices explain it, showing that there's a solution.
Exactly.
Right? That there's a solution to these things. So you didn't come away thinking, oh, there's a problem with no solution. But there are, women and others who are working on a daily basis in these organizations. We also had quite a few no password required alums there.
Yes.
Bia was there, and she was shown training some girls in some skill set with Girls Inc. down in Winter Haven. I thought that was a pretty good segment as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm continually impressed by Bia. She's such a phenom, and she's so young as well. Just incredible. I'm so grateful that we got to have her on the pod, but also it's wonderful to get to see her grow into herself even more.
And it was also the national scope of it, I thought, was really impressive too. So, the winter, I just remarked about the Winter Haven, but Jenny Radcliffe was at the WESIS conference in Nashville, right? So that was, that takes us to some, we're getting out of the Southeast there. And then I thought that the CISO roundtable in Chicago, that was my favorite segment, because that was really like show, don't tell kind of a part of it. Like, look at all these incredible women, and let's talk to them.
Yeah, I completely agree. There was also the Black Girls in Cyber Refresh Summit in Atlanta. I don't know. I know that the documentary came together in a short period of time. Well, I'm sure they don't feel like it was short, but I was impressed with the amount of footage and interviews, and it was such a good documentary. Truly,
it's definitely it's worth a watch for our listeners who haven't seen it. We'll stick the link in the show notes so you can get access to this. It's absolutely worth setting aside time to do, and the partnership with Cisco and Pam's relationship there, pulling together a whole bunch of that was really important as well. And Kayley, what was it like for you to film? I mean, I know you know everyone involved so well in the project, but what was it like to actually record that part?
It's one of those things where you're just kind of bumbling along in your career, and imposter syndrome is real for so many of us, regardless of gender or experience, but it can be especially tough for people like me. And so it's kind of one of those moments where I got to sit back and say, okay, imposter syndrome, I see you. Maybe you should take a back seat. Maybe you should just be quiet.
All right. Well, we've got a great program today, and we'll talk about some of these issues with our guests. But I'm your host today, Jack Clabby. I'm a cybersecurity attorney at Carlton Fields, PA. With me, as always, is Kayley Melton. Kayley is a cybersecurity mercenary and the Bob Ross of InfoSec. So today we're going to chat with Confidence Staveley. Confidence is the founder and the executive director of the Cybersafe Foundation. Cybersafe Foundation is dedicated to promoting inclusive and secure digital access across Africa. She's also the host of the YouTube series API Kitchen, where she simplifies API security with creative, easy to understand recipes. In 2021, Confidence was named one of 35 emerging leaders in the Obama Foundation Leaders Africa program. This is going to be a good one. Stay tuned. We're going to dive right in after a short break.
Welcome to No Password Required, a monthly conversation that introduces you to some of the top talent in the world of cybersecurity.
Welcome back. Our guest today is Confidence Staveley. Confidence, welcome to No Password Required.
Thank you, Jack. It's a pleasure to be here and to meet all of you, Rex and Melton as well.
Well, I'd like to start, if we can, with your current role. Can you tell us, Confidence, about your position at the Cybersafe Foundation and a little bit about how the organization came to be?
Oh, that's an interesting story. Backstory, my mom was a victim of cybercrime, and at this time I was, of course, a cybersecurity professional already, doing great work to help enterprises, secure their information systems, as we all do, don't we? But somehow in the mix of all of that, we forget that the enterprises need to be protected, but users as well of technology need to know where the guardrails should be, need to know how to protect themselves, need to know what the risk of using technology could be. And my mom, like many other users of technology, was in the crosshairs of cyber criminals, and she became a victim. And I saw secondhand, not firsthand, but I saw secondhand how painful that experience was, and I really wanted to make sure that less and less people get to experience what she experienced. And starting off from there, just really around driving awareness as a way for me to plug the gap between what enterprises were doing to secure the population, right? And what the government was doing. That gap is where I wanted to play. And the more I played in that space and saw that awareness wasn't the only big issue, right? There were issues around skills, the skills gap. There were issues around gender exclusion, really. And so for me, I increasingly grew my capacity and looked at what other roles I could play apart from driving cyber awareness. And I slowly, over the course of 5 years, going on 6 now, have been taking up space in that area. And so Cybersafe Foundation is really just driving safe and inclusive access to digital on the African continent. Very strong words there, safe and then inclusive, because when we're leaving half of our population behind, like we currently have it, like on the continent of Africa, although we may make up 50% of the population, we only make up 9% of the cyber workforce on the continent. So it's crazy. The numbers just mean that 1 in every 10 cybersecurity professionals you'd find is a woman. That's not acceptable in any world. So for me, it was just ensuring that we go past the talk and do. And for me, it's just where I've been doing a lot of work with my team, putting our heads down in the sun and just dealing with all of those challenges.
and confidence. As a first generation university graduate in your family, can you share a little bit about your journey and what it's been like for you?
That's such a beautiful question because it takes me down memory lane. And I mean, as an African, I just want to share a bit of some backstories to help our audience really understand why these are, these are big issues. So in the West, like I've come to see living here, when the majority of people who do not go to school do it out of choice, right? They choose, this is how to go up, this is how I want to do my life, maybe school doesn't work for me, the systems don't exactly work for where I'm headed, right? But on the African continent, it's different. People don't go to school, not because they do not want to go to school. Most of the time, it's because they can't afford to go to school, or the educational systems are not robust enough. So we don't have enough schools for all of the kids to go to school. So that is typically what happens. But the average African family is so obsessed, especially the Nigerian ones. They're so obsessed with education, right? Because we believe that education is our only ticket out of the hard times we get to experience. I mean, case in point here. And so my parents, although they didn't go to school, get to college or anything, they were so big on making sure that they're able to give us that one ticket out of poverty, right? Out of extreme poverty. And what better ways to set your children up for success than to make sure that they go on career paths that they have seen models of success for. And so when your young daughter is doing so well in the sciences, you look at her and say, oh, you must be a medical doctor because you're so good in sciences. And when your young boy is doing so well with the sciences, you say, oh, you must be an engineer because you do so well, with the sciences. And when your daughter talks a lot and does well in the arts, oh, you are a lawyer. And so they sell you all of this parts of success because that's what they've seen as models of success, and you're sort of like showing signs of that with the things you do well. And what happened with me was my parents had sold me that dream of being a medical doctor for so long. I had bought into it and I thought it was mine, until my parents asked me to take a gap year from when I finished high school going to college. Asked me to take a gap year. Now, as a parent myself today, I know in retrospect that it wasn't a choice they were making for me to just stay at home. Okay. It was because they wanted to gather their resources together to be able to afford college, right? But of course, no parent says that to their child. And and in that time, my parents said, okay, while you're taking the gap year, don't be idle. Go on to this computer learning institute, learn how to use computers.
Oh, wow.
Guys, that was the first time I ever laid hands on the PC. Wow. And I was well into my late teens at that time. Okay. And for the first time, I, learned how to use basic computing packages like Microsoft Word and the rest. I was excited. But I went past that. I started learning networking. I learned how to code. Guys, did I feel alive? Every time I was able to write code in C, I learned how to write code in C++. I went on to C#, learned Java. I was so excited. And at this time, I had been in this school for so long and my admission to study medicine had come. And I knew, oh my God, how am I going to break my parents' heart, and tell them that their medical doctor isn't going to be a medical doctor. They're not going to have one, by the way. She's going to want to do technology. And with no models of success whatsoever, I had to pitch them that this model of success they had not seen, they had to trust and allow me to go chase my passions.
Confidence, what was that presentation like? Was it a formal presentation? Did you work on it over the course of weeks? Like, how did it happen?
It makes me excited to share because I understand my parents way more now as a parent myself, that they were the bravest people I could have ever met. I don't know if I'm that brave with my child, but when a child tells you things that you don't understand, but you have to let them go and go chase what they're looking at doing. It's huge. My parents, I think, didn't understand half of what I said, but they understood one language that we all understand, and that language is passion. they could see it in my eyes. My eyes were sparkling. I sometimes forgot to eat because I was so enthralled by this world I had found. And so my parents knew this. And my mom would always say something. And my mom never really went to school, but she's such a wise woman. She would say, you can't outperform a passionate person. I'll say that again. She says, you cannot outperform a passionate person. And so I think those were the things my parents could see. So at the time, again, I didn't have, back to your question, I didn't have a computer of my own. I would only have access to computers when I go to this training center. So I had to buy cardboard papers, cut them into squares, to sort of imitate slides. And I would have my ideas on each of them. Yeah, to basically present how technology was the present and it would be such a huge thing in the future, and how I would play a critical role in shaping that, because I would build things. I didn't even know I was going to go into securing those things, but I was, I was telling them about how the ways we're doing things would change, the ways we do banking, the way we vote was going to change, and how technology was going to be the front and center of all of that. And so I put my ideas on, like I used a marker pen and just wrote on cardboard papers to make them into little placards, right? And that was how I made my presentation. My parents were kind enough to be taken in. They just said grudgingly, we'll think about it and let you know tomorrow. And the next day they called me up and said, oh, you can go ahead and chase what you want to chase. We're going to have you turn down that admission. And so I went on to get an advanced diploma in software engineering. Okay. I got a scholarship because, again, the education I was able to get, my parents would never have been able to afford it in a million years. So I got a scholarship to do a degree in IT and business information systems from a school in the UK. And then I got another scholarship because I came out with the first class. So it was easy to get another scholarship. I had shown myself exceptional. So I got a scholarship to do a master's in IT management. And it was during my master's that I took an elective in cryptography. That was where I got into information security. So, I mean, the irony of it all to get into cybersecurity from such a very challenging module like cryptography, but it was just exciting for me. And really, that has been my journey.
That's wonderful.
So, fast forwarding a bit, at this stage in your career, you've earned a seat at the table where significant decisions are made. How do you handle the weight of that responsibility?
I like that you called it a responsibility, because usually when we talk about seats, it's about how we're contributing to the conversation, and that's just all we're focused on. But I think I always go back to myself 20 years ago. What were the things I could really have loved to have? How did I get to find my foot here? How did I stumble my way through here? I mean, clearly I've just narrated a series of happenstance that has led to where I am today. And so for me, it's just been ensuring that more people, I hold that responsibility to ensure that more people stumble their way through, and if possible, make the journey lighter and less ridden with mistakes. So that is the responsibility I really hold. And like a lot of girls on the continent, I clearly have seen that the stats are not lying, that although access to devices are generally issue on the African continent, girls are disproportionately hit by not having access to all of these sort of resources. And for me, I've also seen the very strong implication of just exposing people to technology in the first place. And I hold that as a strong responsibility as I grow in my career, to not just constantly look back and throw the rope down, but also mobilize resources to ensure that at scale, we can give more people the opportunities that I was able to get, that literally changed my life. Because I see very clearly that, I know not everyone will come out to get these opportunities and become a big an influence like I have thankfully become. But you can see how one girl's life or one person's life, because it doesn't have to be a woman here, right? One person's life, changes a lot more people. I have thankfully been able to do a lot more work, opening people's eyes, giving people more opportunities around technology. And I hold that very strong responsibility to not just be a voice, to land on that table, but a representation of what's possible. And what's possible not just on the African continent, but on a global scale. What's possible that excellence really doesn't know color, doesn't know gender, it's just something that speaks for itself and everyone understands that. And just showing people what could happen, what's possible with just chasing your passions, chasing them down, making sure that you're excelling and putting in the work. And so for me, it's the responsibility of mobilizing the resources, showing what's possible, being that voice for all of those people, and then also showing and shining the lights around the possible.
Confidence, as part of the sort of journey you've been on, you're now in leadership positions. Can you tell us a little bit about your leadership style and maybe how that's evolved over your career?
Oh, my leadership journey has been quite a very interesting one. I have come from the kind of leadership that I was mirrored a lot in, a lot of the settings I was in. I mean, I was lucky to be in a family that had been mixed, because again, where you're coming from really just affects a lot of things, really. My family was one that allowed you to question the status quo, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not very, very African. I would say parents, across the world, generally would just have the final say. Somehow that really helped me in modeling what leadership could be. And I have slowly grown into, especially with trainings, into value-based leadership. The Obama Foundation, for example, really helped build that, where I look at, what my values are as a person, how that sets up the organization that I'm leading or the function that I'm leading, and just drives things from there. And more practically speaking, I strongly believe that as a leader, my role is that of a conductor in an orchestra. So my role is just basically making sure that the right people in the team in the first place, they're getting the right tools for the work that they do. They are very recognized for the work that they do. When they do great work, they're supported where they're struggling, and that they are subject matter experts in the roles that they are basically filling. My role is to ensure that I bring the best of them to the table. I'm responsible for that. And because if I do my job well of bringing the best of them to the table, then I wouldn't have to tell them what to do. I would only have to sell a vision, because that's what leadership is about. I would only have to sell a vision. This is the vision. This is where we're heading. That's what I'm paid to do. And then I am then playing that conductor and orchestra role to ensure that we're able to jointly achieve that vision, which is the symphony. That's great.
So I imagine this is sort of indirectly related to having to sell a vision. You've mentioned that one of your strengths is translating quite complex or complicated topics into something that's more accessible. How do you use that skill along with creativity to create your series API Kitchen?
Oh yeah, that was a very interesting one, because people don't realize it, but API Kitchen was a protest actually. Yes. So weeks before I started off creating API Kitchen, a major leader in my part of the world had said women belong in the kitchen. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so for me, I wasn't going to say women don't belong in the kitchen. I love the kitchen. I love the reaction my family gets when I cook. But that's not the only place where I have people love me being in, or I love being in, or I enjoy being in, or I make, a lot of difference in. I make differences in the boardroom. I make a lot of places. And so I wanted to clearly sit in that place, right? I belong in the kitchen, but I belong anywhere else I want to belong. And so that's actually a bit of a backstory. And I then began to think about also that food connects us all. Again, we may not speak the same languages. If I came here and I spoke French, I'm not sure any one of you here understands French or Spanish, or, I don't know. I don't understand. A little bit. But the thing I'm very sure we all have done in the past week has been eat food, whether or not we made it, right? So I thought about it like I could use the analogies around that very thing that connects us to be able to explain something abstract for some or something not as important for others, which is API security. I think that just distilling that knowledge into something that we can relate to really helps us assimilate the concepts I was trying to really push, or the ideas I was trying to really push. And for me, that has been my style. I'm very big on not talking over people's heads, ensuring that they're able to get the point. And what easy way to do that than what connects us all.
That's beautiful.
Well, thank you, Confidence. We're going to take a short break now. We'll return with our lifestyle polygraph. So stay with us.
You're listening to the No Password Required podcast. We cover cybersecurity and a lot of other stuff.
Welcome back. As many of you know, the Lifestyle Polygraph is a test used by the federal government to determine if a person is worthy of learning our nation's most important secrets. Here, we use this technique for slightly lower stakes to determine whether our guest can join our fantasy cybersecurity squad. Confidence, are you ready for the Lifestyle Polygraph?
I'm ready.
All right. First question. Can you share a memorable moment when you saw firsthand the positive impact of your work?
Oh, okay. There's so many. Which one would I go for? Okay. Can I do two, please?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. One was I saw a girl in Nigeria who didn't know how to use computers, came through our doors, was able to learn how to use computers, and then she got on to choosing penetration testing as a core major that she does within our Cyber Girls Fellowship program. And she had said to herself, she wrote a note and stuck it on her study table that she was going to study 5 hours extra, and she was going to graduate the best fellow. Fast forward to the end of the program, which is usually 7 months long. She graduated with the best fellow overall for the whole program, but also on her track. She got a job with a major cybersecurity consulting firm, but that wasn't the best part of it. We had done this video of her where she had said a lot of things she was going to become, and this was 3 years ago. So I then did a recap of her 3 years after she had said she was going to be this person who was going to make changes in the world. And I was comparing notes from what she had said. She had achieved everything she wanted to achieve. They found a vulnerability that protected them. Basically, was stop the company from hemorrhaging up to $1 million from just that bug that she responsibly disclosed. She had started mentoring more people to come into cyber. She had multiplied her income by over 400%, by just, working in cyber. Her parents couldn't afford to, she was raised by only her father. Her father had to do menial jobs, so now she's able to take care of her family. And I just looked at all of the things she was saying she was going to have to do 3 years after, and the journey she had become. And my heart was just full with just how skills could become. And then there is another lady who in Kenya was a lawyer, single mom, really struggling with raising her kids and everything. And she got into the program, became a data protection officer for a bank. She's grown through the ranks, and now she's been able to, even after people had said, oh, you have girls, there's nothing that can become of you, they've said that to her mom, she has been able to build a little home for her mom. And she sent me pictures, and I was like, oh my gosh. She said, you don't know what you've done for my family. She now puts her siblings through school and have been able to take care of her family. And I see all of this, and I know maybe sometimes it's just about talking about how we're protecting the enterprises, but cybersecurity skills can be a double-edged sword, and just seeing how this changes these people's lives is just a beautiful moment for me to look at my work.
Oh, that's amazing. That gave me goosebumps both times. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, second question. If an AI version of you managed your day-to-day cybersecurity tasks, what would you do with your new free time?
Create! I will go on on a creator splurge. There'll be there'll be a lot more to dish out. I would make sure that everything I hum in the bathroom becomes
Oh yeah, I love that. I love it.
becomes a reality. So yeah, creativity would be one thing that would have the 100% version of 100% of my time.
I can totally relate. I love how quickly you said that too. All right. The third question. Outside of the API kitchen, what's your signature dish when cooking?
There is this meal that I make with a lot of vegetables. I'm going to call the Nigerian name for it. I'm sure you'll not be able to pronounce it, but it's fine. It's called edikaikong. So it's actually pumpkin leaves, like pumpkins we know in the States here, but the leaves, yeah. There's a combination of them. So it's a vegetable soup, but what we call soups is different. So soups are not like liquid. Soups are thick, they have texture. So we have a lot of that back home. And when I make that for my families, my in-laws, they're always like, oh my God, whenever they have me around, please make that. So definitely that would be something that I would be making.
Oh, that sounds delicious. I've never had it before, but it sounds amazing. I love a good soup.
Thank you.
All right. Number 4. If you could embark on any non-work related adventure tomorrow, where would you go and what's the first thing you would do when you got there?
Okay. I think I will go back to the Maldives. I had such a great time, yes. I don't know how to swim, but I snorkeled a lot there. I mean, it's weird how much risk I take, but but I mean, with a guard and some life jacket on, I'm underwater seeing sea creatures, shark watching even sometimes, but yes. I did that on Christmas Day 3 years ago, and it's still the most memorable adventure I've ever done. Yeah, just shark hunting, but not hunting to kill, but just watching them. And yeah, very, very interesting stuff.
That's got to be the coolest way to spend Christmas I've ever heard of.
Yes.
All right, final question. In which world do you think you would thrive more? Harry Potter, Star Wars, or Marvel?
Definitely Marvel. Wakanda forever.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it'll be Marvel. Thank you.
All right, Jack, what do you think? Does confidence have what it takes to join our fantasy cybersecurity squad?
Yes, 100%. Confidence, welcome to the fantasy cybersecurity squad.
Thank you very much.
Those are great. It was wonderful to have you on. Thank you. If our listeners want to connect with you, learn more about the projects that you're involved in, how can they do that?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so just search Confidence Staveley on LinkedIn and you would find me. Follow or connect. I actually prefer connections. And on Twitter, I'm CCNetSuite. You'll see a bit of the more talkative version of me there. And on Instagram, maybe a bit more chilled. I'm CCNet there on Instagram. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Confidence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show. But first, Kayley, what did you learn today?
Wow, confidence was just amazing. What an inspiration. I had a very good reminder how important it is to not gatekeep, to remember to hold the door open for other people who are like you or even worse off than you were, so that they can get a bit of the goods as well.
One other thing that I learned too was she had such a great description about being a values-based leader. There are a lot of leaders in this space, in the cyberspace, that are leading because they were just the best engineer. They got promoted to leadership and don't know what to do with themselves. Her description of it makes complete sense why she's such a success and why she's so inspirational. The orchestra metaphor is really helpful, but this idea of values-based leading, that we're going to sit down and we're going to actually lay out what our values are, then we're going to stick to them, is very powerful. And that was great to hear it from someone with such a position of leadership and importance in the community. Well, for the entire No Password Required team, I'm Jack Clabby. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk with you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the No Password Required podcast. You can find us on social media at No Password Pod. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the No Password Required podcast. And if you know someone who might like it, please share it with them. The show is produced by Cyber Florida. And a special thank you goes out to our friends at Carlton Fields. If you'd like to learn more, visit our website, cyberflorida.org/pod. All opinions expressed by the No Password Required podcast participants are their own and do not exclusively represent the views and opinions of Cyber Florida.